What's up, guys? We're back, second video, and today we're going to be talking about CG.
Yeah, CG.
What is CG?
Center of gravity.
Okay, that's the video. Thank you for watching, guys. Make sure to like and subscribe. Come back. No, I'm just playing. So we're going to talk about CG and what is it? Why is it important? What causes bad flying if the CG is not right, and so on. So first of all, let's talk about what does CG mean. So CG, like thumbnail said.
Yeah, the center of gravity. This is where when you put the plane like this, it kind of doesn't teeter and it stays like level.
Right. So this applies to any plane, no matter the size. Whether you're flying a small plane like this, plane this size, or the F-16, or bigger than that. Doesn't matter what size the plane is. The CG is always going to be a big factor onto how the plane flies. So center of gravity. I can compare it to, like, if you ever try to balance a broomstick on your hand or something like that. It's kind of close to that. Get the right balance so to where the broom doesn't fall over. But when it comes to apply to planes, it matters. It's basically located most of the time on the wing.
Right, where the spot is most likely.
I'm gonna demonstrate on this jet right here.
The spot is where most of the load is
the primary,
carries a plane.
Correct. The chord of the plane, pretty much.
From toy to full scale, 747.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
It works.
CG is important.
First of all, there's two ways to measure CG. Let's talk about how to measure, or before we talk about how to measure CG, let me show you pretty much what we mean. So if this is our plane, or the spar of the plane is leading towards this side right here, right there. So give or take, you want the CG to be around that point. If you don't have a point like that, I like to have it close to the leading edge. I don't want to have it towards the trailing edge of the wing. I want to have it towards the leading edge, the thickest part of the wing, which is like the chord of the wing, the thickest area. And that pretty much ensures that the plane is a little bit nose heavy. You don't want to fly the plane tail heavy. Tail heavy meaning if you're balancing the plane and you're on CG point, when you let go and it goes back like that, that's tail heavy.
Right.
You don't want that.
It's always
better to be nose heavy. And I like to fly nose heavy a little bit too, because it penetrates through strong winds easier than like neutrally balanced.
When it's nose heavy, you have more control of the surface. You can always pitch the nose up. When it's tail heavy,
but at the same time, you don't want it to have too nose heavy either.
Right.
That leads to bad flying characters.
Right.
But generally, it's way better to be nose heavy than tail heavy. You want to avoid being tail heavy at once.
And what's the saying?
There's a saying: nose heavy plane flies bad, a tail heavy plane flies once.
Right.
What does that mean?
That means when it's tail heavy, you have absolutely almost no control.
Although I did land one time a tail heavy plane, I don't know how I did that. It was a tail heavy plane.
Lucky. You get lucky.
It was a tail heavy plane, and the guy had a gyro in there which wasn't secured to the plane itself, so it was flopping around. And for those of you who know how gyros work, is it tries to correct for like turbulent air. And when it's not attached to the plane and it's flopping around, it's just going to control the plane out of control. On top of that, the plane was still heavy, and I don't know, long story short, I landed it, I don't know how.
At F-16, right?
No, it was a C-28.
Oh yeah?
C-28. How will we check CG? So on smaller planes like this, you can just go with your hand and with your fingers. You can just pick about the leading edge and balance it.
Yeah, those are light planes, maybe about 2 or 3 pounds.
Yeah.
You can manage with the fingers.
And again, you want it to be slightly nose down, not tail down at all.
If anything, nose heavy, you're better off than tail heavy.
Right. Let's go about to measuring the differences, because there's a difference between high wing planes, low wing planes. Mm-hmm. So to basically underline it, high wing plane means the wing is on the top part of the fuselage. This is the fuselage. And a low wing plane means that the wing is on the bottom. And there are some planes that are in the middle, which is more like an aerobatic 3D type plane. But on high wing planes, you can just go ahead. Plane is facing normally. Just pick it up by the CG points and see what it's doing.
Do you need to CG with the battery in or not?
Yes, battery in, definitely. But we'll get to that right now. But on a lowing plane, it is way easier to determine the proper CG when you flip it upside down. So on a plane like this, you wouldn't want to just lift it up from its CG points and try to CG it. You would want to flip it upside down like this, and then put your CG points, and with 2 fingers like this. So with just 2 fingers like this on the CG point on both sides of the wing, I will hold it, and it's just balancing. And if you can see, it's on a nose down angle.
It's coming down this way.
And the tail is up.
The tail is up.
You don't want it like this. This is bad.
Right.
So once you determine that it's good like this, that means you're safe to fly. What you want to do when you're actually CGing it, right? Like you mentioned earlier, you want to have the battery in the plane. Right. You don't want to CG the plane without. Well, let me rephrase that. Whatever is gonna be in the plane while you're flying, you want it to have in the plane. So if it's a battery powered plane, have your battery, have your receiver, your servos, everything that's gonna be in the plane while you're flying, including the canopy and all that kind of stuff, needs to be in the plane while you're CGing it.
It must be secured, otherwise shifting.
Pretty much the finalized point, have it there. The CG is like pretty much the last step when you're building, because when you're building you can shift things around, move it, and CG always shifts while you're in the building process. But whenever you're done with your building, then you can CG it.
Right. Once you get the CG, you mark where the battery that keeps moving all the time in and out of the plane is the battery. So you mark where it's always be. So every time you fly, it's positioned right where it was CG'd correctly, and secure it. Of course, you don't want that battery to be flopping around and moving around. Otherwise, it will change the CG
flight,
and it might be way too nose heavy or way too tail heavy, and it leads to a crash.
Like you said, you want to have everything in the plane when you're CGing it.
Yes.
This is an example.
Whether it being a battery operated or a jet fuel operated plane.
So let me show you an example of it.
Just a correction about the fuel powered jets. We'll get to that. You don't CG that with the fuel in.
Right.
You CG that with the UAT.
We'll go into detail on that. So right now the plane is sitting perfectly flat. The cool thing about this plane is the landing gear. The landing gear right now is pretty much in line with the core, with the spar of the wing. So where the landing gear is pretty much where our CG point is as well on this plane.
Right, and as we mentioned before, you know, right where the bulk of the strength, the bulk of the plane is carried by the spar. Most of the weight, most of the landing gear, most of everything, you want it around the strongest point, and therefore it is in line with the landing gear.
Yeah, this plane just so happens that it's perfectly pretty much on the landing gear. So let me show an example of why we need everything in the plane when we're CGing it. So it's sitting perfectly flat right now. Why is it sitting perfectly flat?
Because the battery is already in.
What's going to happen when I take the battery out?
Counterbalancing the back.
So what happens when I take the battery out?
It's going to go like this. The tail is going to drop.
So battery's in the plane. You're going to pull the battery out.
And that's a heavy battery.
And I'll even put the canopy back on. Right? And I'm holding it up right now. When I let go, look what happens.
Right.
It's tail heavy.
And if you put it right here, see, even right here, it's not coming to. You gotta bring it right here. That's where the position of the battery is. It takes that much, and that's a big battery. It weighs maybe.
So let me CG it like this right now.
2 pounds. That's a big battery.
Let me with points again, and if I let go, it's not gonna balance. It's just
it's gonna keep going.
Yeah,
with
I'm not doing that. It's just the balance of it. But when you put the battery back in the front where it needs to be,
put it.
Now all of a sudden, now it's balancing. That's CG.
Right. Look what happens if I remove the battery.
It just goes down. So that's pretty much the importance of CG. Why does that matter? So if you're tail heavy and whenever you want to pitch the plane, it becomes very pitch sensitive. You give it a little bit of elevator to climb, and it'll just keep snapping on you. Throw the tail down and roll over. It just doesn't like to be tail heavy whatsoever at all.
Yeah, because the control surfaces are further back. The elevator is way at the end of the back end
Right
of the
here.
plane. Right here. So that's your control surface. And if it's tail heavy, no matter how much your elevator you put in, the behavior of the plane is completely
Altered.
compromised.
Pretty much. One more thing I want to talk about before we finish off this video is in terms of, actually let's get into the turbine powered stuff real quick.
Yes,
really quickly.
As I
Why don't you explain?
wanted to correct what I said earlier about CGing a turbine jet. Typically what we do is you CG it with the UAT. UAT is a small reservoir of fuel that eliminate bubbles from going into the turbine.
Called inflamehouse.
And the reason you CG it without fuel is while you're flying, you're burning that fuel, and the more you fly, the
Lighter becomes.
the lighter it becomes, and therefore
Your CG shifts.
that fuel is burned is not going to be going back in while you're flying. So you want to CG it when it's empty. This is how you land and so forth.
Right. And also, once you CG when it's empty, generally the fuel tanks are located ahead of the CG or right on the CG.
Yeah, for most jets
Yeah.
are right on the CG line,
Right.
so it's this is how the designer designed it, and therefore being empty or full, it doesn't alter too much.
It still does, but not too much.
Not too much.
Yeah.
You're still towards nose heavier a tad than the tail heavy.
Right. So once you CG with the fuel empty, what I like to do is fill it up full, like you're gonna fly, CG it again,
Right.
and make sure that it's a little bit towards the nose.
Yeah, and gauge
Right.
where it is. I mean, it's for an experienced pilot, you would figure out how much nose heavy or tail your nose heavy you should be, and therefore you plan your flight accordingly.
Right. So after we got that out of the way, let me talk about one more final thing before we end this one. Generally, when you're flying like EDFs, stuff like this, even though it comes pretty much pre-ready for you, it's already the place where you put your battery is already set, and your CG is pretty much dead on. You still have some room to shift your battery forward and back inside the plane itself. So you can still shift the battery forward, increase the nose heavy, shift it back. The reason for that is different batteries weigh different. So someone can be flying with, for example, a 5,000 milliamp capacity battery and fly the same plane on a 3,000 milliamp capacity. That 5,000 is going to weigh more than 3,000.
Right.
So you have room in the plane to shift it around, so you can get that proper CG.
Yeah, depending on the battery,
Right.
because the different batteries weigh differently,
Right.
and because of that, the position where you secure the battery matters.
Right. Also, even if you have the same battery, this isn't the case too often. Very, very rare for this happen, but I did have it happen one time. These are two identical batteries, same manufacturer, same milliamp, same specs, exactly the same specs, even bought at the same time. However, one is shorter and more stubby, the other one is longer and thinner. And even though they weigh approximately the same, the length of the battery also can determine the CG point of the plane. So you always want to, pretty much with every battery that you have that you change in the plane, CG it, make sure you're not tail heavy at all. Same batteries. One is a bit longer and shorter, longer and thinner. The other one is a bit stubbier and fatter. It's a little hard to see on the camera, but it is definitely different. Pretty much covers CG. Anything else, or pretty much covered everything?
Happy flying, safe flying,
and also you want to remember to like and
subscribe,
and also comment down below if you want to see anything else.
Hope you guys enjoy these. We're trying to make them as informative as possible.
And definitely comment down below, because if you have like ideas that you want us to cover in a video, just throw it down below.
Any question, anything, we would love to hear from you, and we'll do everything possible to answer your questions. Happy flying, safe flying, happy landings.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. You guys, you audience are the best. Thank you for watching. Booyah.